My girlfriend's best friend threw me down the stairs and manipulated her into breaking up with me. He then tried to burn my house down and assaulted me, so I got him imprisoned. I was discharged from special forces after a mortar shell injured my leg, and back at home, I reconnected with my high school sweetheart. I was at her place one night when I woke up to someone climbing the stairs. I got up and pulled out my shotgun, and in response, the guy screamed my girlfriend's name. Turns out he was her brother. Well, he wasn't actually her brother, just a junkie who worked with her years ago, and she once gave him a cheeseburger to help his come down. He began pleading with her, saying he was evicted and needed a place to stay. Because this was her house, I had no say, and she agreed to house him. He was extremely disrespectful towards her during this time. He demanded she cook for him, do his laundry, and buy him groceries. Well, one fateful night he demanded I wash his dishes for him. I told him to fuck off and turned around to walk downstairs and out of the apartment. I was a few steps down when the door behind me flew open. He ran at me and pushed me down. I landed on my back and hit my head on the concrete. He then jumped on top of me, and I fought back. I grit through and got on top of him, then proceeded to start wailing blows on him. I honestly didn't care if I unalived him. Someone had to die, and it wouldn't be me. But then my girlfriend saved his life. She heard the yelling that was happening downstairs, and she came running and found me on top and wailing down blows on him over and over. She screamed for me to get off, and I did. As soon as I did, his mouth started running. Sister, he threatened to unalive me, and he attacked me and threw me down the stairs because I asked him to bring back the PS3. I honestly thought she might believe him for a moment, but thankfully, she knew that was lies. The neighbor's security camera outside backed that up. That morning, I took her to work. I took her 3-year-old daughter to daycare. One thing I need to mention is that my girlfriend had a 3-year-old daughter whose dad wasn't in the picture, and she was the sweetest and most adorable little girl ever. Anyway, after I took her to school, I went to work. I had to explain to my boss why I had bloody knuckles and why I was holding a cold pack to the back of my head. They offered to call the police so I could press charges. I told them no. My boss damn near ordered me to call the police or he'd put me on medical leave, to which I replied that I'd rather be on med leave than lose my girlfriend for calling the cops on her brother. It was made clear to me, under no uncertain terms, that I am a particularly stupid kind of eye-hole and that would come back to bite me in my butt someday. Well, he was right. Basically, brother gave her an ultimatum that either I leave and she dumped me, or he leaves and walks out of her and her daughter's life, which, to be fair to my ex, that loser had been the only constant male figure in her kid's life since she was born, so that would have been devastating for the gremlin, and she wanted to spare her that kind of pain. And so that meant I got the axe. Honestly, I'd have rather taken an actual axe to the heart, because what I actually felt was way worse. It's one thing when you're saying goodbye to the woman you love, but to have to also say goodbye to a sobbing little kid you wanted so much in your heart to adopt and make your own? I don't want to meet the man who can hold back the tears from that. That man scares me. I went back to my apartment. I put together a little box with the toys and keepsakes and clothing items they'd left behind and waited for the right time to bring it by her work. I was a broken man, but that little fucker, he wanted to kick me while I was down. He had mentioned a while ago he had friends who would kick my butt if they ever got the chance, and I always thought he was bluffing. Well, he wasn't bluffing. He did have some friends with rap sheets and bad intentions, and in the months that followed her and I breaking up, he put them to work. I woke up one morning to discover my car had been blocked up, the wheels taken off, and they had spray-painted stuff on my car after busting out my windows. What my insurance didn't cover cost me $2,500 in repairs. Police were called, a report was made. Surveillance footage was useless though. Faces covered, they wore gloves, so no prints, and it's not like they're rolling out the CSI to collect hair follicles off the deck for auto vandalism. 2 weeks later, an attempted arson attack on my front door. Someone wearing a mask and a hoodie lit a Molotov cocktail and threw it at my front door's welcome mat, and if it weren't for the apartment's fire sprinklers actually working, my apartment would have burnt down with me in it because I wasn't jumping from the 3rd floor balcony. That was a more serious crime. Cops were very interested in solving it, but again, no usable prints, face covered for the camera, etc. Then it was quiet for a month. My ex had reached out to me when she heard about the fire, and I told her I knew it was her brother, but I didn't have any proof. She said she'd say something to him, and coincidentally, nothing happened again for a while, until I guess cops came around asking to talk to him, because obviously I gave them his name as a person of interest. In the month and some change since our spat, she basically forced him to find some kind of work, or she was going to kick him out. So, he had gotten a part-time gig at an auto shop in town that had a rep for being the one you don't go to, but fine to recommend to someone you hate. They cut corners everywhere they could, so it was a perfect job for the weasel, at least until the cops came came looking for him one day, asking about that fire. The owners didn't like having cops asking about their employees, so since he'd only been there a week or two, he got the boot. He deeply appreciated that. So, one night, I am getting home from work. I had stopped at the gym on the way, worked up a good sweat, and got a bite to eat from the grocery store. I pulled into my spot in my Enterprise rental, my car was still in the shop, and walked into my apartment. Real quick. While I was over 21 and legally owned guns and had a concealed carry permit, on days where I was on base, I did not carry my pistol. It's incredibly rare for anyone whose explicit job description doesn't include carries a pistol at all times to be allowed to carry a weapon on base. Since I'm not leaving a pistol on my car, and there weren't any places to securely store a weapon while I was working, I just opted to not take my gun with me. It's also why I did not have a pistol on me the morning brother jumped me. I was unarmed. I lived on the 3rd floor. There was a 4th floor above me and stairs leading to it. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs fast, and I turned to see 4 guys in hoods, masks, and wearing gloves coming towards me. My door was open, so I dropped my groceries and tried to slam the door behind me. They got a foot in and managed to wedge through into my apartment. What followed took place during a period of about 14 seconds. The neighbor across the way, after the fire, got a security cam installed outside their door as well, so we know the actual timestamps down to the second. I kept a loaded pistol tucked in a closet near my front door. Irresponsible, I know, but I was younger and more naive than I am now. In the scuffle with the first guy who came through the door, I managed to reach my hand into the closet, find the gun, and push myself back and away to give us several feet of space. I remember very vividly seeing all 4 men in my doorway and hallway. The first guy I had just pushed having been body blocked from falling backward and was starting to come toward me a second time. I raised my pistol. This one was a SIG P226 chambered in .40 Smith & Wesson, and just as I heard one of them shout, "Gun," I started lining up shots and pulling the trigger. There were no limb shots, no shooting to scare them. I didn't try to wing them. Body, head, as I had trained, as I had been taught. The first guy went down. The second guy caught 2 of the through-and-throughs from the first guy before I plugged him in the forehead. The third guy stopped dead in his tracks before catching 4 center of mass, and the 4th guy was halfway out the door before I emptied the rest of my magazine into him through friend number 3 and whatever I could see and aim at. Well, unfortunately the AY hole lived, but what that meant was that I couldn't be charged in the most serious way possible for it. However, the first 3 recipients of my high-velocity sleeping pills didn't live. The first guy insides were all over the second guy. The second guys were all over my wall. They were all pronounced dead on the scene. The 4th guy was my ex's brother. Of the 3 bullets that connected him, 1 grazed his butt, the other thoroughly lodged itself in his right butt cheek, and the 3rd one hit him square in the spinal cord, right around the kidney area, shattered his spine, and completely destroyed his lucrative career in competitive breakdance and bicycling. He was paralyzed from the navel down, had to have a permanent catheter to catch his pee, and a diaper for what was now the most useful byproduct he was capable of producing. He'd never walk again. He'd never sleep with anyone again. And when he was healthy enough to be discharged from the hospital, he was locked up in prison, given 3 charges since he caught the rap for his 3 buddies getting unalived. He was also charged with conspiracy to commit unaliving, assault, battery, and he even caught the reckless endangerment charges for me discharging my firearm in an apartment complex with another apartment across the hall from the open door I was shooting towards. He was never going to breathe free air again. I would like to say that this ended up happily ever after, that she took me back, that we got married, and I adopted her little one, and we had a couple spares of our own. But she didn't. Within 24 hours, she declared that she was scared of me, that she did not want me anywhere near her or her child, that she'd call the police on me if she ever saw me near her home or her place of work, which sucked. I liked the target that she worked at. She called me every name under the sun. She accused me of sicking the cops on him to instigate a response, just so I could shoot him. She ignored the arson, the vandalism, the various threats he'd thrown at me in the previous months we were together. I never saw her again. She blocked me on everything. Her family blocked me. She changed her number, she transferred to a different target, and after a couple of months she moved to a different apartment in a different part of town. It has been 8 years, and I still haven't heard from her. I know she's alive. Friends of friends informed me she got married in 2020, had a second kid, and is happy, so more power to her. I never got my happy ending, my white picket fence. Believe it or not, unaliving 3 guys, even for a person trained for war and conditioned for the possibility that one day he might have to do it, messes with your head, especially when you consider it happened in your home and not in Baghdad. There's a huge mental and emotional disconnect disconnect and difference between unaliving someone for work and unaliving someone because your life was in danger. I had PTSD. I couldn't touch any of my guns once I got them back for a full year without having panic attacks. The Navy was great about it all. They aided with the investigation, including that CO who called me the Apex Donut, giving his statement of that morning I got jumped. I was offered the chance to live on base with protective detail until things cooled down. I declined. 8 years. Since then, I've retired. I'm now working in the private sector. I have my own LLC, making great money doing cybersecurity and site security consulting. Occasionally, I go out boating. My partner of 3 years is the most loving, supportive person I've ever been with. I know they have my back no matter who tries to unalive me. We're talking about having kids before we get too much older. Life's good. But you know what really warmed my heart? Just the other day, a Google alert I set up 8 years ago triggered. It was brothers, first and last name, followed by the word obituary. It turns out someone in prison got sick and tired of the annoying white boy in a wheelchair talking so much crap and flexing on people, believing nobody would hit someone in a wheelchair. They used his wheelchair to unalive and used their shoes to finish him off with a few good stomps. Of course, it doesn't say that in the obituary. It says he was a bright and lovable lad when he was young, who fell into hard times in his early adulthood and landed in prison. The real surprise is apparently he is survived by a daughter none of us knew he had back then. So, sucks for her, but I doubt she ever got a chance to know him anyway. Honestly, that's for the best.